Well, hello and welcome again to our reading of the Greek New Testament. We're reading Matthew's Gospel. We're up to chapter 22. This is the parable of the marriage feast, which does not appear in Mark, but it is in Luke's Gospel. Kai apokrites ho Iesus palineipen en parabolais autois legon. And Jesus, having answered, he said again in parables to them. So perhaps he spoke once again to them in parables, legon, saying, homoi orthe he basileia ton uranon anthropo basile, hostes poies in gamus to fiu autu. The kingdom of the heavens has been compared. This is from homoi o, it's an aorist passive, has been compared to a man who is king. From Basilius, hostis, who made gamus. Now gamos is a wedding, so here it's a wedding feast perhaps. Who made, and it's plural for singular, which you often get in Greek, so he made a marriage feast for his son. Kai epistelen pros doulos autu kalesai tus keklemenus es tu gamus, kai uk ethelon elthen. And he sent his slaves, kalesai, aorist infinitive, to call those literally having been called. Now kaleo can mean to call, it can also mean to invite. Although often you get a compound verb for that one, but here I think it's those invited to the gamus, to the marriage feasts. Kai uk eithelon elthain, but they did not wish to come. Now this is the imperfect from thelo, and it looks irregular with this funny augment here, but originally the verb thelo was ethelo in classical Greek, and so it formed its imperfect in a perfectly regular way by just augmenting the epsilon. But in later Greek, the at the beginning of ethelo disappears and you just get thelo, but the imperfect uses the old imperfect that was formed from the earlier version of the verb. Palin apestelen alus doulos legon, and he sent again other slaves, saying, epatitois keklemenois idu ho aristonmu he toimaka, kai hoitaroi mu kai tas sitista te thumena kai panta hetoima. So he sent these other slaves, saying, speak to those invited, or say to those invited, idu, behold. Now the ariston is the, often translated as breakfast. It's literally the best meal, which perhaps is breakfast, but in later Greek it's often used really of any meal except supper, except the final dinner of the day, and often was the better of the meals. So behold, perhaps the feast, or my feast, he toimaka, is I have prepared. This is from hetoi masdo, and we're getting this perfect form here. So I have prepared my meal, my wedding meal, my feast, and the tauroi, and my bulls and ta sitista. It's a funny word here. It's only here in the New Testament. It's often translated as fattened calves. It's formed from a verb meaning to feed with grain, which is sitos. And as I said, it's only here in the New Testament. And we get tethumena, which is a perfect passive participle from thuo, and it's neuter plural agreeing with sitista, but it really agrees both with in sense with the tauroi and the sitista. So my bulls and my fatted calves have been sacrificed, kaipanta hetoima, and all things are hetoima prepared. Duty es tus gamos, come to the feast, to the marriage feast. Hoi de amelesan tes epeelthin, hosmin es ton idion agron, hode epi ten emporian autu. And they, now this is from Armelio, which it means to have no concern for, often translated as reject, perhaps sometimes translated as made excuses. So they had no interest in it. So they, having no interest, they departed, or making excuses or rejecting it. Now we get hos men and hos de here. We don't get very many of these mens and debts, but we get one here because of the contrast. So the one understand going into his own agron, his own field. Another understand going into his emporia, into his business. This is an abstract noun, emporia, first declension feminine, as many of the feminine nouns are abstract nouns. An emporion is like a shop, and emporia is more the abstract to his business dealings. Hoi de loipoi, but the others, kratesantes tus doulos autu, having taken hold of his slaves, hubrisan, they treated them insolently or violently, from hubrisdo. Hubris is a very old classical word meaning insolence, and it generally has a violent connotation to it. And apektenan, and they killed them. Hode basilius orgisthe, this is from orgisdamai, to become angry. So the king became angry, kai pempsas ta stratiumata, and having sent his armies, autu apolisen tus phones secenus, they killed these murderers. Now this is phon ace, it's the accusative from phon use. Classical Greek this would be phon eas, but in later Greek they often use the nominative ending and for the accusative as well. So we get phon ace here, but it is accusative. So they killed these murderers, and they enepresen. This is from pimprami. Pimprami. Pimprami is an old verb, an old me verb. It's pi iota it begins with, which is a reduplicated present, and you get a nasal infix in the pimprami. Now if you take all that away, you get the root, which is pray, and that's the root of this, and then it's got a compound with n. So it's impimprami if you're looking this one up, to burn, to set fire to their city. And this is the aorist form. So he set fire to their city. Kai toti lege tus doulos autu, at that time he says to his slaves, homen gamos hetoimos estin. And we get another men and debt, which is nice here. We don't get very many of those in Matthew. The wedding feast is hetoimos, is ready, but those having been invited, perfect passive participle here, uk eisen axioi, they are not worthy. Poruis their un epitas dx odus ton hodon. Having so go therefore, and we get this interesting word here, dx hodos. The meaning of this is not totally secure. It is an older word that it does occur. It's fairly rare, but it does occur, I think, in earlier Greek. It refers to the road that leads out from a city. So it's literally the roads out from the roads. It's a bit like perhaps our arterial roads or something. So there will be roads, small streets and roads at the edge of a city, and then you have a major road. Of course, the Romans built lots of these major roads. So it's so go therefore to the Diexodos ton hodon, well, to the road that leads out of the cities, kai hosus ian va'an, and as many as hurete you might find, kalesate, invite them or call them to the feasts, to the marriage feasts. Kai excel thontes koiduloi ekenoi, es tas hodus, sun egugin pantes hus Huron. And having gone out, those slaves, having gone out into the roads, this is from Sun Ago, the heiress, they gathered all whom they met. Heiress from Hurisco. We get a tek high here, so both and when you've got tek high, the it's enclitic. The te, you see the accent here is acute here, and the word that's coming with the te goes before it. So ponerus tek high agathus. So evil and good. Kai place they hogamos, anakai menon. Now the verb here, place they, this is another aorist from another one of these me verbs. This is from pimplami. We had pimprami before, that was to burn. This is from pimplami, and it's the same structure. We've got if you look this up, you'll see it begins with a pi iota, which is a reduplicated present, and you get a nasal mu infix, pimplami. And if you strip all that out, you get play, which is the root of this. It means to fill. So the marriage feast was full, and then we get a partitive genitive here. It was full of those who were reclining. Or perhaps just an ordinary genitive here. It was filled up after this verb of filling. It was filled up with those who were reclining. Es elthon de hobazilius, theasastai tus anakai menus, idaine kaianthropon, uk en dedumenon, enduma gamu. And the king, having gone in to behold, to look at those who were reclining, perhaps to inspect those who were reclining, Aiden Eke, he saw there anthropon, a man, not en dedumenon. This is from enduo. Get our word endu from this. This is the perfect passive participle. Not where, and then cognate with that is enduma. So enduo is to put on, and enduma is that which you put on. So clothing. So he saw a man there, not clothed in the clothing gamu of a marriage. A bit like turning up to a formal marriage wearing jeans and t-shirt. Kai lege auto, and he says to him, historic present, hetare, O comrade, O friend, how did you come here not having enduma gamu, the clothing of a wedding? Hode ephimothe. This is a lovely verb. It's from phimo. If you're looking this one up, it's an Omicron contract verb. It means to muzzle, and was the original sense of it, as in to put a muzzle on an animal to shut them up. But it comes to just mean he was silent. He was muzzled. He didn't say anything. So he fell silent. It's often a good translation of this one. Toti Hobazilius, at that time the king, said to the servants, De santes autu podas caeceras ekbalati auton est ton skotos to exoteron. Having bound him hands and feet, well, literally feet and hands in that order, cast him out into the outer darkness, as to skotos to exoteron. Eke estai hoklauthmos kai hobrugmos ton odonton. And there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. It's an expression we've seen, I think, before in Matthew. Polo gar e syncletoi oligoi de electoi. A famous line, for many are called but few are chosen. We get this adjective formed from Kallio. Many are called but few are chosen. And again, adjective formed from eklego. The next little pericope is in Mark and in Luke, and it's to do with the paying of taxes to Caesar. Toti poruthentes hoi pharisaioi, sumbulion elabon hopos auton, pagidusos in en logo. At that time the Pharisees coming, they took counsel together how they might ensnare him. This is from pagiduo, this is the aorist subjunctive here, en logo, in his speech. It's to ensnare. So the verb is very rare, it only occurs a very small number of times, this verb, but the noun pagis, a snare, is quite a common classical word. It's a trap or snare, and this is the verb formed from that, pagiduo. Kai apostelusin auto tus methetus auton metatone heredianon legontes, and they send, historic present, to him their disciples along with the Herodians, saying, Didaskale, teacher, oidamin hoti elethes kai ten hodon tu theou en aletheia didaskes, kai umele soi periudenos. O teacher, we know that you are true, and didaskes, you teach the way of God in truth. Kai umele soi, there is no concern to you regarding no one, i.e. regarding anyone. Greek has double negatives, but they don't cancel. So you don't really care what anyone says, is the sense of this. Not that you don't care for anyone, but you do not care regarding what others might say, is the sense. Uga blepes es prosopon anthropon. This again is a Semitic idiom here for literally you look into the face of a man. Ape un hemin tissoi doce. Speak therefore to us what seems right, soi to you. That doce in the sense of what seems good, what seems right to you. And now we get a question. Ex esti dunai knison kaisari de eu. Is it lawful to give knison? We get our word census from this, of course. It refers to a poll tax which had been implemented by the Romans. So is it right to give poll tax to Caesar or not? Gnus de Iesus ten ponerian auton apen, and Jesus, knowing their wickedness, ponerian, we get this abstract noun from poneros, the wickedness, he said, Time perasdati, why do you test me? Hypocrita, you hypocrites. Epidexati moi ton nomisma tu knisu. Show to me the nomisma, the coin of the poll tax. Hoi de pros einenkan auto denarion, and they brought to him a denarius. This, of course, the aorist from prosphero. It is normally in classical Greek a weak aorist, but in biblical Greek you get this, a strong aorist, I should say. In biblical Greek you get this weak aorist ending for einenkan, for einenkon from pharaoh. And he says to them, Tinos he icon haute kai he epigraphe. Whose is this icon? Is an image or likeness, and the epigraphe and the inscription. Legusi auto, they say to him, it belongs to Caesar. This is a genitive here. It is the icon, the image of Caesar. Toti lege autois, that time he says to them, apoditi un ta kaiseros kaiseri kai ta tu theo to theo. Another famous verse here. He says to them, give back therefore to Caesar the things of Caesar, and understand, give back to God the things of God. Kai accusantes ethaumasan, and they heard this, they were amazed. Kai aphentes auton, and leaving him be, ap aelthan, again we get a weak aorist for a strong aorist, they departed. And that's the first half of chapter 22.